Hello and welcome to our podcast. My name is Don Putkela.
And I'm Angela Putkela, and we're with the Putkela Group Real Estate Professionals.
And this is our podcast, Welcome to Livingston, where we talk all about Livingston County, businesses coming into it, talk a little bit about real estate every once in a while. And today we have a special guest. We actually have our daughter in today. Do you want to say hi?
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome. This is Evie Putkela, and she does have firsthand experience with what we're going to be talking about today.
We're going to be talking about a couple things today, but one of the things I wanted to start out with is we had a great event last week at Spicer's.
Yeah, Spicer's Orchard up in the Fenton area. It was wonderful, but it was kind of a client appreciation event and where we invite people out, and boy, was that fun.
Yeah, Evie, what did we do there?
We blueberry picked a lot, and it was really fun.
Yeah, the blueberry picking was a lot of fun. And one of the things I thought that was really interesting about it, which kind of brings us to our topic today and what kind of thought us to start thinking about this, is a lot of the people that came were families with their kids, because obviously it was the blueberry picking. But seeing how many of our clients had young kids that were coming out and they were blueberry picking kind of brought to mind the fact of how many families we've helped move.
Right. And over the years, there's been so many, and we help all types of people, you know.
Right, exactly.
But in terms of as it relates to families for this episode, I think.
That
whole
whole idea, you know, because I mean, we did a great episode where we talked about moving with pets.
Yeah.
We talked about helping your parents that were transitioning, moving, but we hadn't talked about that idea of what are you doing if you're moving with young kids or you're moving with kids of, you know, middle school, high school age, that there's a lot of things that go into that. And, you know, with having the blueberry picking event and it being August now, right, which is not only the biggest month for listing homes, but especially with families, a lot of people say, I want to move during the summer because before school starts, right? So I thought that maybe we could talk a little bit about that. And since we had our daughter in today, we could ask her a little bit about moving, because, you know, we just moved 2 years ago and she went through that process. And but before we get to that, since I wanted to give a shout out to Spicer's, because Spicer's is such a great venue and it's, you know, one of the local cider mills in Livingston County that a lot of people know about. Evie, what did you think about blueberry picking?
It was really fun. I really liked it. There's way more than blueberry picking there. There's play structures, there's animals. I especially liked the goats. They were really kind. But blueberry picking was really fun in general. Okay,
and what about the goats and everything else?
The goats, it's I think 50 cents to get some feed for them, and then they eat it out of your hands, actually. And they're really nice.
Did you have a lot of fun?
I had a lot of fun.
So anyone that is thinking this fall about going out to a cider mill, Spicer's is great. And like Evie said, they have so much more than just the apple picking or the blueberry picking.
And our event was so much fun. We had cider and we had donuts, and we ended up taking care of stuff for our clients, and it was just so nice just to be able to visit with people. And for the blueberries, you know, there was nice big blueberries that were really easy just to pick. So people of all ages, you know, there were some that had some real teeny tiny kids, and that's something that they can do. And even for our kids, you know, they really got into it. And our middle son was great because he's like, look, Mom, if you go down low, those are the ones people aren't getting. And so that was really fun.
And then, you know, making blueberry muffins, eating them, you know, I think there was a couple of kids that ate more blueberries than they picked.
Yeah. So, it was fun. It was
that's always
a fun event. So it went so well. This is going to be an event that we're going to add every year.
Yes.
So, and you don't even necessarily have to be specifically a client to us. If you're one of our listeners and you want to get involved, then stay tuned. And next year we'll let you know.
Yes. So moving with kids. So, you know, the first thing I was thinking about is when you're preparing to move, you know, there's a lot of emotion that goes into just moving in general. But when you have kids, there's so much more that goes into it. So I thought we'd kind of run down an idea of how do you prepare kids to move? How do you make them part of the process? Do you not make them part of the process? Do you just like, hey, we're moving, start packing your bags. I don't think that's the best way of going about it.
Right.
But
sometimes people do it that way, though.
Sometimes they do. And
all kinds.
I think there's a little bit of knowing your kids and knowing their personalities and knowing what they're able to handle and what they're not able to handle. So, and Evie, I want you to answer a few questions and interject a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so you were just turning 9 when we moved, right?
Yeah.
So we took you on some of the showings and such, right?
Yeah.
So we involved you guys all in the process. So if you were thinking about giving advice to other kids or to parents that have kids your age that are going to move, what kinds of things would you think about telling them?
I might say like you gotta include your children. You gotta tell them, maybe bring them on showings. You gotta include them and get them ready because you might have to switch schools. But it's a really nice process. You make new friends along the way, and I really liked it.
Okay, so you switched schools, right?
I switched schools. It was hard, but I made a lot of new friends.
Right.
And you still keep up with some of your old friends too, right? So
yeah, I was actually talking to one of my old friends today.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So one of the things we did that we would encourage other parents to do is we took our kids on a tour of what the new school was going to be and kind of got them used to the idea of this is the district that they would be going to and this was the school that they would be going to, even before we knew that this is the house that we were going to be in. So they kind of had that entry-level idea of starting to get used to the process.
So there's so many different ways. I think just having conversations with your kids and being honest with them of, hey, we're going to be moving. This is something that we want to do. And by helping them be part of the process, then you get more buy-in because you do need their help. There's a lot of packing and unpacking and
getting rid of stuff.
Yeah, this is true.
And
Change is hard for
deciding
kids.
what they wanted to keep with them in their rooms and maybe get them excited about the new things that they could have.
Because with change, there's such opportunity for new things and, have a new room to rearrange how you want your stuff in it, right?
Yeah, I really liked getting the new things for my room, changing it up. It felt really nice.
Yeah, a little reset button.
Yeah,
right?
It was like you're starting something new, so you got to get a fresh start.
Right. And there was things that you changed about your room that maybe you didn't know that you didn't want. Like, you had the pink room before, right?
I had the pink room, yeah.
And you decided you didn't want to start with the pink room this time?
I did not want to start with a pink sparkly room. I wanted to start
you
with
liked
something
that when you were
different.
little. But yeah.
Yeah, and one of the other things I would suggest that you could do is we had our kids make a list of what they were looking for in a house. If they made a wish list of like, hey, these are the things I like about the house we're in right now. These are the things that maybe I'm looking for in a new one. And I think a little bit of that is, again, every family's different of how much do you want to involve them in the process. Because obviously as the parents, you're the ones picking the house, but you still want them to feel like they're engaged. The
interesting part in my mind is a lot of those things, there's some commonality. Right?
Okay.
So for a kid, I want a yard to play in. Well, guess what? So do your parents. They want you, if you're a kid that likes to run around and, be active and all that, they're going to want you to have that. So,
right.
So hearing the child's priorities, or teens for that matter, helps a parent know where their kid is at, especially if it is harder for them to move.
Oh, I think that's a really good point. I think that's great. And I think also it's all about having that buy-in, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times if you're moving because you have a new job and you're getting relocated, that's different than if you're moving because the house doesn't fit you anymore. Either you're bursting at the seams or there's aspects about it that you're like, I want more.
Doesn't work.
And it doesn't work anymore, right? So if the house doesn't work anymore and it's a size issue, which, Evie, when we moved, was size of the house one of the issues?
Size of the house was a major issue.
We're kind of getting at each other's way.
A lot of our stuff was just jammed, and it wasn't the best in terms of space.
And it was loud, right?
It was very loud. I had a room right next to my brother, and when I was talking to my friends, he was talking to his friends. I could hear them through the door, and it wasn't very nice.
So the funny thing is you look at it from those aspects, but I think the commonality that you talked about it is a lot of times the reasons that you are thinking about moving are the same reasons that are going to help get your kids on the same page to be a positive aspect of the move rather than dragging you back saying, why am I doing this? I'm losing my friends, those sorts of things.
Right. Because with kids, they don't even need an excuse to, be grumpy and drag their feet,
Right.
But if you can definitely make sure they understand why you're deciding what you're deciding, then more often than not, there is some maturity there that you can get them on board.
Right. And one of the other major pieces of advice I would give to people, so we only moved about 4 or 5 miles away from our old house, but we moved out of district. So we went from the Howell district to the Brighton district. But one of the things we did beforehand when we were thinking about it is we 100% went and talked to the schools and made sure that school of choice was going to be okay. That if our older kids didn't want to change schools, they didn't have to change schools.
So understanding the options, and in terms of busing, how are you going to get the kids to the school? Were you driving them anyway? But there, was a transfer bus. And but I think some of those policies have changed now. So asking the school to figure out the logistics is something that definitely really helps out. And then if there is just a certain window, I've had some people say, hey, I really want this elementary or just this one or that one, then, your realtor can help you select what house it is based on that. If there's a certain location, or we need to be only the school district.
Or only the school.
Right.
Which we've had before.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so I think that's an important aspect because you're adding a level of complexity in terms of, hey, these are what my priorities are. Where does this line up with the priorities? And do the priorities that my kids have, do they line up with the priorities that I have?
Right.
Right? So, we've had clients before with kids when they're going to move, they're like, we need to make sure that we have a style of house where all of the bedrooms are on one side and then our bedroom is on the other side. Or we had a client that had an adult son living at home that said, my priority is I need the house small enough that he doesn't think he can move in with me.
There you go. A lot of times, too, in terms of a basement. You see somebody say, hey, I need a house with a finished basement. My kids are getting bigger. They're roughhousing or they're hanging out with friends. And that becomes a priority. Because in some cases, if you have an unfinished basement, it's so costly to finish it. Maybe it just makes more sense to sell the home and find a house that suits you better.
Right. But, I would preface all of that with making sure that the adults in the room understand that they're the ones making the decision.
Yes.
And don't let the kids think that they're making the decision.
Right. You'd be surprised how often that happens. Because that's the flip side, and with some token, it's great to have the kids involved. But by the same token, the adults are the adults. Right. They're the ones, who are getting the mortgage, who are, buying the home.
Yep. So Evie, I saw you grinning and giggling over there. Do you remember looking at a bunch of houses with us?
Yeah, I remember looking at a house. It was actually right next to my friend's house, but it wasn't the right house for us. I remember looking at a lot of different houses, but none of them clicked until we found the home we're in right now.
Right. However, what I was going to bring up is there was a house that we looked at that your brothers thought was the perfect house.
With it.
Right?
Yeah, they loved that house. I liked it too, but I like our new house better because I am a swimmer and we actually have a pool in our backyard, which I think is very nice because I could practice my swimming for the swimming season, for competitions and everything. It's really nice.
Right. But the house that, it's funny because our sons really love the house we're in, but the house that they thought that they wanted was because there was their bedrooms were in the basement and they felt like they were going to have their
apartment. There was a kitchen down there. We would have never seen them ever again. And I think they love the idea of, hey,
Right.
But that did not turn out.
And I would also say one of the aspects, because we've had a couple clients that have moved multiple times, that they thought the house that they were going into was going to be perfect, and it wasn't what they expected. And sometimes that happens through, a multitude of reasons.
Sometimes like acreage. I want acreage. I want so much land. And then you realize what's involved with taking care of all that.
Right. But the aspect I would say with kids is, remember, your kids are aging.
Right.
Okay. So the house that you're going to look at, your kids are not always going to be 4, 7, 10 years old. They need to be able to grow into the house. So when you're moving with kids and you're moving a growing family, I always talk to our clients about, does this work for you today? Yes. Is this going to work for you in 24 months? And I think that's a huge aspect of moving with kids, is being forward thinking and going, okay, how does this work moving forward, as well as how does this work for today? Because the house that you were living in worked for where you were, but it doesn't work for where you are now. So try not to make make a bigger leap than you would anticipate in terms of forward thinking.
Almost like, in terms of whether it's, buying a winter jacket.
Right.
If you're buying a winter jacket here in August and it fits your kid just right today, how's that going to turn out in 6 months?
Right. Or it's how parents buy their kids shoes.
Yes. Shoes too.
You always buy your shoes for your kids maybe a half size bigger,
little bit
because
bigger.
you want them to be able to wear them for more than 3 weeks.
Room to grow.
Room to grow.
Yeah. Make sure that what you get still gives you room to grow. Of like, oh, hey, we needed bigger, so we went a little bigger. Well, what happens after that?
Yeah, especially with shoes. I learned that the hard way when we bought me shoes that fit me exactly that day, and it wasn't right. I think we were buying me flip-flops like near the winter months.
Uh-huh.
And I learned that the hard way when my feet grew and it was summertime and they didn't fit me anymore.
Well, there you
Bummer.
go.
See,
so in
growing.
terms of growing into a house, so this is a tough question for you. How would you tell people to think about in terms of growing into a house?
Well, you gotta think about it. Like, my brothers, they are older, so they're probably going to be going to college soon. So the younger, like, I have the biggest room because I'm going to be there the longest, so I'm going to grow the most.
That's true.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, we also have it so that your brothers share a bathroom, and then you have a bathroom. And
I like that too.
Yeah, this is true. So the gender thing kind of came into there too. So that's a lot for people to kind of think through, because there's so many different layouts of homes, right?
Right. Well, and I would say that, like, the interesting thing is, like, when we talk to people, in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s that are moving, they talk about aspects of, like, I don't want stairs anymore. So they're forward thinking about the stairs, right? Or they'll talk, about, I've had these yards with all this landscaping, and I'm sick of taking care of it. So now I want a condo because I don't want to have to take care of the yard anymore, right?
But even still with kids,
right,
to still have room for that. And another big question is, how do you decide which kid gets what room?
Oh my gosh, that's a huge.
All our clients says that's a thing.
We got lucky in that aspect because of the rooms that they picked and such. Mm-hmm. But I would say that when you're moving with kids, try to forward think and make all those decisions in your head as a parent before you start involving the kids in the process. So that way you're able to steer in the directions that you want. That obviously you want them to help you making decisions, but you also want to make sure that they are on board.
Well, because you don't want hard feelings, right? If you have siblings and one room is notably bigger than the other, which with houses happens more than you would even imagine. If so in our head, as we had conversations, those reasons that we listed, that's why she ended up with a bigger room. But the boys knew that going in, right? If we did a showing and we're going through and each child thinks, oh, I'm going to get the big room, and all of a sudden you have to pick between kids, you don't want to start off on the wrong foot and having hard feelings, people being bitter.
Well, and one of the things I just thought about while you were talking is in terms of what we learned the hard way, is bring all the kids on the second showing. They don't need to come for the first showing.
That's true too.
The market we've been in for the last year, a lot of times there was no opportunity to have a second showing because the market was moving so quickly. But as you get to a more balanced market, I think that sometimes it's beneficial to have mom and dad go out and do the showings. And then if they're saying this house doesn't work, this house doesn't work, this house doesn't work, then they don't need to involve the kids in that process if they already know that it's a no, because you don't want to get them excited about something that is not going to happen.
I'm going to challenge you on that.
Okay.
Okay. Because at first we brought the kids, and then that's what we found. We're like, sheesh, let's just save it for the better ones. And then all of a sudden, once we're taking them on, the ones that are worth seriously considering, and we hit on the right house, well, they don't have that context
or
ability to understand why this is the best house. To them, they're like, nah, there's got to be something better. It's like, guess what, kid? This is going to be it.
Well, no, I can see that.
Yeah.
And they also were rather good at drawing out questions about a house that I hadn't thought of.
True.
Or things that they liked that I didn't think were important that, I could take or leave it, but it was something that was key to them.
Right.
And it kind of gives that extra aspect. You like looking at houses, right?
I loved looking at houses, but one thing I would say is that, like, for kids my age or a little younger, what I would say is in the houses, there's furniture there and stuff. You wouldn't get the furniture. You would have your own furniture in there. So it wouldn't be the same. And it might look like it's bigger when it's not. It's just the furniture is smaller, so it gives the illusion that the room is bigger.
That's a really good point, because adults, we may not think that we need to tell our kids that the furniture doesn't come with it. So it would be good to mention that.
Or even like the play structure comes or doesn't come with it.
Right.
Sometimes they take it out, and in my case, they left it in.
Yes.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's really good. But in terms of showings also, for kids, understand that the items there belong to somebody. So it's best to not touch other people's stuff, not sit on, we have had clients where the kids came and jumped on the bed and like, oh, don't do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
To be respectful.
Yes, another one,
showings.
if you're doing showings with kids, make sure they all go to the bathroom before you start doing your showings.
Yes.
You are not allowed to use the bathroom at
Well,
a showing.
if you have to, but we try not to.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
different for
somebody's
little
house.
kids. When a 4-year-old has to go, a 4-year-old has to go.
Yeah.
But is there anything I'm missing here?
I don't think so.
Anything else you want to add, Evie? As being our guest on the show here, you haven't done a lot of talking.
I gotta think about this one. For kids, it's really hard moving, especially if you've been in that house your entire life. It's really hard to let it go. Let it go. But what I would say is that it's gonna get better. You're going to get into a better house. You're going to make new friends. You're still going to stay in contact with your old friends if you want to. It's just really nice. Yep. I keep on saying nice for some reason.
That's okay.
Do you think maybe it's scary for a kid because it's an unknown?
It's pretty scary that you're taking all your stuff and you're never going to see your house again. Maybe walking by it, but you're never going to be inside it again.
But did it end up being not as bad as you thought?
It didn't. It ended up not as bad, like not at all. It felt like I've been in the house my whole life, and I've only been in there for like 2 years.
Do you know why? You bring your stuff with you.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Big part.
It's a big part of it because once you put your stuff in the house, it really feels like your own. It feels like you've been there for a long time.
Yep.
It feels like home.
Yep. So what advice would you give for packing for kids?
I have advice for unpacking, but packing.
Okay, what's your unpacking advice?
Yeah.
I'd say start doing it. Like once you get there, don't be like me that sits on their phone and like a year and a half later you still have a box in your closet. So
good advice.
Very good advice.
It's good advice for adults too.
Yes.
you got to start unpacking early because there's a lot of stuff that you might not think's in your house, but you got to get it empty, completely empty. And if you forget something, well, you forget something. You don't get it back.
Right. That's why you have to really empty out the house. And when you've been in a house in a long time, the good news is it's not quite as sad to leave because it doesn't look like home without any of your stuff in it.
Yes. Yep. So I thought that was really good. Angela, anything you wanted to add?
I don't know. Nothing I can think of.
No, I think that my biggest advice for people moving with kids is make a list, start early, talk to the schools if you need to. Think about the fact of, are you staying in district? Are you moving out of district? What are the long-term ramifications of all those kinds of things? Because you need to answer all those questions before, because there's going to be a million questions that come up about the specific house that if you're able to answer the overall questions and make a list, it gives you a lot more clarity. And I think having that clarity makes the process a lot easier, because a lot of times you're like, well, these are, the 5 things that are most important about a house for me.
Yeah.
And how do you go through those things and then add those other things in? Ask your kids sometimes to make a list of like, hey, if you were going to move, what are the 3 things you're looking for in the house? And if you have 3 kids and they all make lists of 5, all of a sudden you're like, wow, they all said this item in common. And I think that item's important as well. So now we're going to make that as one of our non-negotiables on the house, because all of us in the family are on the same page. And maybe it sometimes draws out some things that you wouldn't have thought about.
Because they make observations about your lifestyle. They're right there with you. Right.
Yeah.
That you may not be aware of. It's a nice double check.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing.
One of the biggest things that I think for a child moving like me or a kid, is that you gotta inform your friends that if you're switching schools, you're not gonna be at that school anymore. You gotta let your friends know, because they might be really surprised if you're leaving and they might get sad. So you gotta warn them beforehand that you still stay in touch, but you just wouldn't be in the same school if you're moving districts.
Great point. Oh, that's a great point. How would be the best way to do that, do you think?
What I did was I told my closest friends first, I'm not gonna say their names, but my super close friends. I told them first, and then I had my birthday party, and I told most of them there. So it was pretty hard, but I think they did take it really well, pretty well. So it's really hard, but it's worth it in the end. So then your friends, you could still stay in contact with them. And
it gives you an opportunity to say goodbye, too.
It gives you an opportunity to say goodbye. I said goodbye to all my friends at my birthday party. I would still hang out with them, but it was really hard.
Well, even your teachers, they were sad to see you go as well.
Yeah, I was in 4th grade, I think.
Yep.
And I switched schools the last year because for where I go, 5th grade starts.
Exactly, yeah. But in terms of social media, sometimes somebody will stick something on social media, and the disadvantage there is they don't get that one-to-one interaction, right? Someone that's a friend of yours, that's been a friend of yours, you want to give them that personal opportunity. Even if it's something that you're texting them instead of talking to them or telling them in person, at least they're hearing it from you, not just, ooh, they saw it on Snapchat or something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I would say if you can do it in person, and that I would advise to do that, because then you could give them a hug goodbye. Text would probably be the worst way to tell.
This is true.
It'd probably be the worst way. I mean, besides somebody else telling them, it'd be the worst way, because if I had my friend text me hey, I'm switching schools and I'm moving, I might not see you ever again. That might not be the best.
But that's better than them coming across it on some kind of social media.
What I would do, if you can't see them in person, I would at least FaceTime them or call them so they could hear your voice, instead of just texting them hey, I'm moving.
Right,
there you go.
Right. This is true.
Good.
Yeah, but so there are a lot of advantages for moving with kids, because you guys were a big help, as there's tons of boxes, even though we had movers, but the movers just kind of put it in the house.
Well, what I would say is if you involve them in the process, then they're engaged, and then they're more likely to help you. Right. Because they feel a part of the process. They don't feel like they were just told they were moving. They feel like they chose to move.
Yeah,
if you can get them on board and let them have ownership, it is such a bonus, right?
Yeah, I actually felt, when you included me, I felt more like I'm going to help them. I'm going to unpack. I'm going to bring the boxes in. I'm going to bring them to the right rooms. I'm going to make sure everything's perfect. I'm going to help.
Cool.
And you have a lot of pride in your home, right?
Yeah, I really love our home. it was hard to unpack at first because it was pretty boring. But then once you got into the groove of it, it felt nice. Like, hey, this is my old snow globe. I'm going to put it here on my new bookshelf. Like, it's nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, this is
Cool.
good stuff.
So, no, thank you guys. Thank you, Evie, for coming. You were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I would say to people out there listening, we've got a couple different episodes about moving. We have a great episode about moving with pets, which a lot of people don't understand just how impactful moving is to a pet's psyche. Because, you know, unlike kids that you can sit down and have a conversation with and they understand it, a lot of times your pets have no idea what's happening.
And they have
And
no
there's a
idea
lot of
what's
prep
going.
involved.
I have a little bit of advice for kids out there. Be patient with your parents. This is stressful. This is a big unknown. This is a big step for them. And so the better you can be about things, then the easier that makes it for them.
Well, and the converse is for parents. Understand that it's really stressful for the kids as well.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You know?
So I wouldn't say rush your parents or like be like, hey, can you help me with this box? Well, they're obviously working on their own. It's really stressful for them in general. And sorry, I'm repeating what you said, but it's...
Well, reiterating, right?
Yeah, reiterating. But I would say try to do what you can on your own before you ask for help. Like, you can ask for help, but like, don't.
It's your chance to make the room your own. If you are a kid that has been in the same house your entire life, understand that your room got set up when you weren't ready to able to set up the room yourself.
Really young.
And this is your chance to have like complete ownership of what your room looks like, how it's set up, where you're putting your items. And it's this reset on organizing everything and starting off on the right foot. Same thing with adults, any adults moving. Take the time to set up it the right way. Just don't throw the stuff out of the box. And
it really makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference.
I know my room is like the complete opposite of what it was, and I'm really happy how it looks right now.
You had a great episode like with Regenerate, and you know how you arrange your space really makes a difference. So.
Yeah. So thank you guys all for listening today. We really appreciate Evie you coming on the show. Please like our episodes, subscribe, check us out on Spotify, Sounder, go to welcometolivingston.com, and you can check us out for real estate or for our podcast there as well. So welcome to Livingston.